Now, back to the Frontier Freedom Hour with Jeff Hunt, sponsored by Centennial Institute at Colorado Christian University. Here's Jeff Hunt.
All right, you guys remember the Gadsden Flag Kid? He has that name. I love that. He's going to be known as the guy for the rest of his life, the Gadsden Flag Kid. And it was because this young boy drugged before these administrators, and you guys maybe saw the video on Twitter. We'll post it on my Twitter account, my X account. But you remember these administrators, and they're just kind of looking down their noses at this young boy, and he's like very nicely dressed. He's very polite, and they just kind of lay into him about how dare you hold these views. You know, it wasn't just about the flag. It was about his kind of conservative viewpoints. And you could tell that he had been raised in a way where he embraced conservative values. He didn't back down from the fight. He was very calm and clear. His mom responded well. And then the whole school district kind of flipped because of the national pressure, right? Even if you get Governor Polis on your side in a blue state like this, you know you're way out in left field. And so they kind of backtracked, but the case continues. So we got this announcement from Mountain States Legal Foundation that the Gadsden Flag Kid files lawsuit over First Amendment violations. And it gets into what's happened. So since then, the district's ban on Jaiden's display of a Gadsden flag patch has been temporarily lifted by school officials. However, the district has threatened to ban it again as soon as anyone, including school officials, quote, complains. The chilling warning that the district may reinforce the policy is nothing short of a threat to censor his speech once again. Joining us on the show is Jim Kerwin, a senior attorney at Mountain States Legal Foundation. So, Jim, they couldn't just let the kid go back to school, huh? We've now got to sue the district. Give us the details on the lawsuit.
So, I guess not. They rather than really having a change of heart, both about the Gadsden flag and even more importantly, in my view, about free speech, the school really has not backed down. They're just doing some damage control on the Gadsden flag. And there are also other issues related to different expression that Jaiden had on his backpack related to Second Amendment freedoms. The school has banned his patches related to those, and they've never said anything about taking back their ban there. So the lawsuit was filed in federal court on Monday. It will be going forward as quickly as we can push it. We're seeking an order from the court requiring the school to restore all of Jaiden's First Amendment rights. That includes his right to fly the Gadsden flag at will. It includes his right to put the patches in favor of Second Amendment freedoms back on his backpack. And in addition, there's a broader policy issue here with the district. The district has a number of rules that are in its dress code that are meant to prevent, certain kinds of expression that could conceivably cause problems with educational mission of the school. That is something that's allowed under Supreme Court precedent. Students definitely have First Amendment rights. They're not quite the same as what adults would have when they grow up, and there's good reason for that. If a student is expressing their First Amendment right to protest, say, a war or some kind of government policy, and they do that by marching up and down the halls and chanting slogans all day long, nobody in school can learn anything, right? It's too noisy. So schools can stop that kind of expression, but that's not at all what Jaiden is doing in this case. He's silently got messages on his backpack, and really what happens is it just makes some people feel uncomfortable that he has certain views. And they are not, it's very clear under the law that they're not allowed to prevent somebody from expressing themselves, even a student in a 7th grade classroom, merely because they find the viewpoint disagreeable.
Talking with Jim Kerwin, senior attorney at Mountain States Legal Foundation. So as you pointed out in the last segment, there's not a straight ban on patches. Kids can have other patches. This really has to do with this particular patch or speech that the district disagrees with. Now, I got to believe, Jim Kerwin, that the district has an attorney who is familiar with the Constitution. What is their argument? Why take this? There's got to be general counsel for the district that goes, guys, come on, this is not something you're going to win in the courts.
Well, that's an interesting question. I am not so sure that well, there's a couple of things I'll say about this. One is there's a doctrine in the law called qualified immunity that kind of gives government agents a second bite at the apple when they violate your constitutional rights. So sometimes in-house counsel may know that what their client, that is the government agency, wants to do is getting pretty close to a constitutional line or even going over it. But the way that qualified immunity works is that if it's a close enough call, they might get a second pass from the court. So that's kind of a little bit inside baseball, legally speaking. But I think that could potentially be part of what goes on. The other part of it, though, just to let you know what their argument would be, it's that somehow the Gadsden flag, for example, might be perceived by other students as having roots in racism, which is what they said, which would so kind of attack the identity of students who are racial minorities that they would be unable to access learning in the classroom. There's a lot of problems with that theory. One is there's no reason to think that anybody would look at the Gadsden flag who hasn't been steeped in kind of left-wing political ideology. I wouldn't just think of it for what it really is. It's a flag from the Revolutionary War, expressing a warning to the government of England that you should not, trample the rights of Americans. So the idea that some seventh grader would look at that and jump, and they might recognize it. Hopefully they will if they've been taught history. They'll recognize that as, that's the flag from the Revolutionary War. It's showing expressing a message of resistance to governmental overreach. But instead of that, the school is assuming the student will say, oh my gosh, really, that's a racist flag because back in the 1770s, slavery was not illegal, and the person who invented the flag was in fact a slave owner. That's true as far as I understand it, but it doesn't have anything to do with what the meaning of the flag is, or especially important, what a seventh grader in 2023 is going to perceive when they see that flag on Jaiden's backpack.
So are you arguing that there should be no line, there is a line, all that when it comes to this stuff? So let's say the kids, and this obviously didn't take place in Jaiden's case, but wanted to have a clearly racist patch on. Should the school be able to have the power to step in on that issue?
Yeah, so this isn't like an argument that we're making about where to set the line. There is, in fact, very clear Supreme Court precedent on this. Here's where the line is. If a student's expression will disturb the educational mission of the school, then it's something that the school can regulate. So an example of that, there were a lot of cases a few decades ago involving kids who in schools that had a history of kind of racial antagonism. So there might have been, in one year, there would be, very unfortunately, like a fight between students of one race and students of another race. In subsequent years, a student might have wanted to bring a banner saying like Black Power, or alternatively to have a patch showing the Confederate battle flag. In those kinds of cases, the courts would apply this analysis and say, well, is it reasonable for the school to think that if we let that flag be shown on somebody's backpack, that will offend some other kids so much so that there might be a fight after school, like even a race-based fight, which is a pretty terrible thing.
Right.
So, and in those kinds of cases, yes, that was the kind of evidence that the school was looking at. They said last year there was basically a race fight, and this year we have students who want to, display these racially charged images. Therefore, I think under the First Amendment, I'm allowed to prevent that expression, because if I don't, there's going to be trouble at school, right? Nothing like that is even remotely the case here. Like I said before, Jaiden's been wearing these flags on his and other patches on his backpack for years, and nobody's ever had there haven't been. It hasn't inspired anybody to start throwing punches, right? So there's nothing for the school to point to be able to say that this comes anywhere close to the constitutional line where they're able to regulate his speech.
That's interesting. So the facts are demonstrating that kids are not being offended by this. It's not causing disruption in the classroom. There's no evidence that people are getting in fights or anything over this. This was simply, it looks like, from the facts of the case, an administrator frustrated with the actual flag elevating this issue towards the administration and then the district, and them agreeing with the administrator and deciding to come down. I mean, did this get all the way up to the school board in coming back down against Jaiden?
Yes, it's we haven't engaged in discovery yet, so we don't know all of the ins and outs. But from what we can see, the decisions here were jointly made by the school and the school district. It's Harrison School District 2. And there were absolutely involvement at the highest levels of the administration at the school district level. We will see what discovery shows about whether they were really pulling the strings even more so than the school. It's unclear at this point, but it seems like these were at least joint decisions by both of these levels of government.
We're talking to James Kerwin, senior counsel at Mountain States Legal Foundation, about the Gadsden flag kid. If you remember him, he's back in because Jaiden Rodriguez is going after the school district, so he's proactively trying to protect free speech. And there's a great line in your case that Jaiden's case is important for all Americans who are concerned about the increasing tendency of public schools to silence points of view that do not fit with the, quote, progressive political orthodoxy. We're going to continue this conversation when we return. You're listening to the Centennial Institute, or the Frontier Freedom Hour, sponsored by the Centennial Institute at Colorado Christian University.